Good evening. I just love saying that. Hello, everyone. I know it's been like a grip since I've been here, right? Because I've just been going through it, like the rest of the world, right? But here's the thing is, I thought of another story that I thought you guys might want to hear. What do you know? Okay, so this is one of those things that you learn when you learn a life lesson, and you probably didn't, so much realize it at the time. Maybe I sort of did, but this is a life lesson, okay? This is how I learned never to wish anyone dead, okay? That's what this is. I mean, no matter how much you hate someone, no matter how mad you are at someone, no matter any of those things, don't ever wish harm on anyone, okay? Alright, years and years and years ago, because my kids are all in their 30s, okay, and my two youngest at the time were probably 2 and 3, okay? And we moved into this house next door to what we thought was a really nice couple, and they had a girl and a boy, almost 18-year-old girl and young teenage boy. And of course we met them, moving in and everything, right? And kind of got to know them a little bit because they were, obviously because they lived right next door, but I would see them, outside, watering the flowers or whatever. The husband and the wife, his name was Len. For the life of me, I can't remember her dang name, and that kind of makes me sad almost. But anyways, when we first moved in there, everything was peachy. She was nice to me. She was nice to my kids. She was nice to everybody. All right. Well, then, as time went by, different things started happening. First, like I said, my two younger kids, they were only 2 and 3 at the time. Okay. So obviously, no, they can't read. Okay. So one day, who knows why, because they were 2 and 3, that's why, they decided to leave my backyard and go into the next door neighbor's backyard. So that's what they did, and all of a sudden, I hear this lady talking to my kids. And she's saying, I know you guys are young, but didn't you see that sign on my gate that says no trespassing? I hear this and I go out there and I'm like, lady, of course they don't know it says no trespassing. They're 2 and 3 years old. They can't read your freaking sign. I said, kids, get over here. And they came running. I said, don't you ever go in her yard again. Okay, Mom, okay. So then my other son, my older son, he's like, see, if he was 3, then Dale must have been about 8, I'm guessing. Somewhere in there, about 8, 7 or 8 probably. And we lived, just a half a block away from like this little corner grocery store. And so, he used to go down there a lot, and getting candies or whatever. And I don't remember what he went down there for that day. But it was the summertime, and where I live in the summertime, the streets and the sidewalks, they're pretty hot. And I've never made my kids wear shoes, What a terrible thing. Right? I don't like shoes. I didn't make them wear shoes. So he's on his way back from the store, and he's walking down the parking strip. We have parking strips, where there's a bit of grass between the street and the sidewalk, right? So he's walking down the parking strip, and she's out in her front yard freaking watering her flowers, right? So my son walks by, and she squirted him with the fucking hose. And I was like, are you kidding me? Why are you squirting my kid with those? Okay, so I didn't realize this. So he comes in the house and he's dripping wet and he's crying. And I said, what is wrong? And he tells me, the lady next door is squirting me with a hose. So, of course, I go running out there because she just pissed me off, Don't piss off Mama Bear. So I go running out there and I said, as I'm running out there, did you just squirt my kid with the fucking hose? And she goes, yeah, he was on my parking strip. I said, number one, it's the cities. And number two, he's a little kid and the freaking sidewalk is hot, right? Oh, this woman. So I go, start walking over in her direction because I really wanted to snatch her up by the nape of her neck and tell her what for, okay? So, she ran in her house and slammed the door. So then, now, mind you, all of these things happened over, like, a period of probably a year altogether. Yeah, more than likely, like a year or so, over a period of time. Okay. So, the next thing is my two younger kids that are 2 and 3 years old-ish. They were young, okay? Not in school yet. They're sitting in my very own backyard at my very own picnic table, eating their very own lunch. And what does this bitch do but squirt my kids over the fucking fence? She squirts my kids and their food with the hose. I hear my kids start screaming, and of course I run out the back door like, what the fuck, and they're crying, and, and they're soaking freaking wet, and so is their food. And I'm screaming at this bitch, what the fuck is wrong with you? And she said something, I don't even remember what it was, and I was like, what? Like, I saw red, like, you don't fuck with people's kids like that. That's just wrong. And I freaking ran out my back gate, and I ran over there, and I was going to beat her ass. She fucking ran in the house and slammed the goddamn door. I'm like, get out here, you fucking bitch. I'm kicking the door and punching the door, and I'm like, get your fucking ass out of here. I'll squirt you with a fucking hose, Would she come outside? No. So, then she calls the health department, and she tells the health department that my garage is full of garbage, hence also full of rats. Okay, rats. Oh my God. So, we have kept rats as pets, but not, as, like, pests, Okay, so anyway, so the health department comes over and they're all, blah, blah, blah. And I go, are you freaking serious? And they're like, yeah. I go, well, would you like to see my garage, So I go out there and open up the door and show them my garage full of tools and lawnmower and, whatever kind of crap you put in your garage, right? Antifreeze. And they're like, oh, okay then, I'm like, okay, thank you very much. Have a nice day. Go away. So then she calls, let's see. She called the fire department on me. A fire truck showed up. And right now I can't remember why. To save my life, I can't remember why. But for some reason or other, she called the fire department on me. And then she called our local, at the time, our local dog pound, okay? And she told them that I kept my dogs in my backyard 24/7. They had no dog houses. They were all on chains. They had no food and no water, and I never cleaned up their poop. So the Spokane person came by and went down the alley behind my house and looked in my backyard. They saw no dog houses and no food and water and no chains because there was no dogs out there. Dogs live in the freaking house. And, of course, we cleaned up the dog poop. Now, we had a herd of dogs. I don't know. We must have had... At any time, we had 3 to 5 dogs. I don't know. All the time, we had dogs. Okay? But they were good dogs. They didn't bite anybody. They didn't cause anybody any problems. And the dog poop and everything got cleaned up. That was one good thing that my husband did was, kept up on things like that, right? So... they come and knock on my door, and they already knew me anyways from this other dog I had. But anyway, we won't go into that. So they come and knock on the door, and they're like, hey, somebody said, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, okay, so are we good? And they're like, oh, yeah, we're good. I just wanted to let you know. And I said, oh, I'm pretty sure it's the chick next. I called her the bitch next door. It was just the bitch next door. That was my favorite phrase for her. Well, I had a couple other ones, but I'm not going to share that on YouTube. So, she, then, okay, let me just real quick interject. I had a lot of stuff going on in my life at that time. I was under a lot of stress. My ex-husband causes me a lot of stress. For those who know me personally, they know exactly what I'm talking about, okay? And really, honestly, the very last thing I needed was this lady causing me more stress, okay? So, she calls the police in my city and tells them, now this was, what did I say, about 30 years ago. Close to that anyways, right? And she calls and tells the police in my city that I am growing pot in the upstairs of my house. Okay. So, these 2 guys in suits, they show up at my door, and they're all, hey, somebody called and said that you're growing pot in the upstairs of your house. And I said, really? And what makes them think that? And they said, because there's a light on up there all the time. And I said, oh, let me guess. And I look over and I go, it was the bitch next door. And right as I say that, bam, her front door slams shut. Okay? I came unglued. I completely and totally lost it. I totally did. I came unglued. This woman had been fucking with my life for so long. I couldn't believe now this is what she's doing. Okay? So I go off on this guy. And I'm like, are you freaking serious? And he's like, well, yeah. And I'm screaming at him in the front yard of my house. And I'm telling them, does the right hand not know what the left hand is doing? And they're like, what? And I said, my husband's name. I said, does, blankety blank mean anything to you? And they're like, oh, that's this house? I go, yeah. And your frickin' policemen have been here every single night for like the past 3 frickin' months. And then you come to my house and this is what you're going to tell me? I go, oh. I said, you want to go up there and look? He's like, oh, no. It's okay. Right. So, it was the older guy that I was talking to, and the younger guy, they were both wearing suits, I'm thinking they're The younger guy, you know, that was the way it was with cops back in those days. They thought they were better than you, and you better just deal with it, you know? That was the way it was, right? And he kept looking down his nose at me, and he'd go, "Calm down, ma'am. Calm down, ma'am." And I said, "No." And finally, the other guy says to him, nah. It's like, he kind of goes, you know, it's cool. Just go over there. And so I talk to him, you know, for a while, and they leave. So I go, and she's watching out. She opened the front door back up, and she's watching out the, you know, crack it. She's got the door open this far, watching me out the door, right? And I'm like, crazy fucking bitch. You know, and trust me when I say there's more to the story that I don't need to tell y'all, okay? But I was under a lot of stress right then. And so, you know, that's when I started going, you know, I wish she'd just fucking die. Because, like, every time I turned around, right, she was doing something to me. Or to my kids. Now, if she'd have done all those things to me, I don't think that I would have been so mad. But she did that shit to my kids, and they were little. Squirt them with the fucking hose. Squirt their food. Tell them they can't walk on your parking strip. I mean, come on. So, I went somewhere one night. I can't remember where I went. I went somewhere one night, and I come back home, and I see red and blue lights out in my alley. So I'm like, oh my goodness. So I go out, and I look out back, and there's an ambulance in the alley. And all the kids are out there, and they're all like looking over the fence. And I think there was a cop out there too, and he's telling the kids to get down or whatever. And I'm like, what's going on? And they go, I don't know. So I stood up on the picnic table and looked over just far enough to see. And this woman, I want to say her name was Diane or Deborah. I can't remember. Anyway, she was laying on the ground. The paramedics are working on her. Len is standing there, sad, you know. Both of her kids were gone by then because she was so mean to them that they couldn't take it anymore, so they left. And I got that from the husband, so I know it's true, okay? So anyways, it was just them, you know, and so Len's like, oh my gosh, and so, she, apparently, so anyway, they put her in the ambulance, and off they go, and we never see her again. I see Len like 3 days later, and I said, dude, is your wife okay? Is everything all right? And he said, no, she died. What? She what? Yeah, she died. I said, what? What happened? He said, well, apparently she had had an earache for like 3 days, and it finally was hurting her so bad that she said, you better take me to the hospital. So on the way to walk into the freaking car, she fucking had an aneurysm burst in her head right there in her backyard. She fucking falls out dead on the ground. Dude calls 911. They come. They get her back. And they got her down to the hospital. And just shortly after they got there, they had her hooked up to all these machines and all this stuff trying to figure out what was what. They thought maybe she had a heart attack or a stroke at first, I guess. Like I said, this was a long time ago. And so they got her all hooked up to all this stuff. And then she has another even bigger aneurysm, which completely, she was brain dead. And so they turned the machines off that night because she was effectively dead, you know. Well, I found this out and I just started crying. Now, mind you, you know, there was not a lot of love lost between me and the bitch next door. But I didn't have any idea, you know. And Len says the doctors told him that for those who were closest to her, with her having that big of a personality change, it should have been a red flag. And they should have You know, like taking her to the doctor sooner. But no one did. They were all just, you know, trying to deal with her or whatever. And I just wanted to beat her ass, you know, like, oh my God. So, anyhows, I felt so bad for so long because I wished this woman dead and she died. You can't, uh, you know, you can't come back, you can't go back from that. You know what I'm saying? And it was like, oh my God. I felt like the lowest piece of shit on the face of the earth. Now, obviously, I know it wasn't my fault. She had 2 aneurysms in her brain. That was not my fault. Obviously, right? But still in all, the guilt that I carried around for the longest time because of that was horrible. So, the moral of the story is, don't ever, ever wish anyone dead. Bye.